Build Your Library was a completely new experience for us. We have never done anything that was so laid out and so complete, as close to a all-in-one curriculum without any supplementation. The last time I used anything like that was Elizabeth's kindergarten year, and she's in college. And I found it was too many things I had to modify then, and so I've never done it again. Build Your Library, though, was a perfect choice for Ben this year. I've looked at Build Your Library in the past, but I couldn't quite make it work before. This year was the first year where I felt like it could actually fit well for us. But I only did it for Ben because Matthew, as much as he enjoys reading, he is not the book lover that Ben is. Ben will go through a bazillion books, and so a literature-based program I knew would be a good fit for him. I just had to get us to that possibility where it was the right time. 9th grade was absolutely that time, and I am so glad we did it. He absolutely enjoyed it. But you'll notice I'm using the past tense there. That's because it's March, first day of March, and he finished almost all of it in January. And for me, that was absolutely one of the cons. So today we are going to talk about Build Your Library, my thoughts about it, and I'm going to give you a wee bit of a glance. There's not a lot to flip through, so I'm not going to do a full flip through, but I'll put up some images as we go. If you've never watched one of my curriculum spotlights, I'm going to give you some pros and cons and general information, but I'm not going to tell you whether or not it's a good program or not, because I often talk about it's a good program if it fits for your family. No curriculum out there is one that I think can be recommended across the board. It is a secular program. We are a Christian family, but we mostly use secular programs because, well, for lots of reasons. And I talk about this, I have an old video about whether we're Christian or secular homeschools, so I'll try to link it in there. But specifically when it comes to science, we are not a young earth family. So that eliminates a lot of Christian programs. This one absolutely has been fine for us. One, it's not young earth, so that was good for us. And we didn't find anything that was anti-Christian, which is a concern for a lot of families who are looking at secular curriculum. They're afraid that it will be anti-Christian. Well, I have never seen that in any program. Not that there's not, but we've never seen that. So I want to put that out there before we start. We are a Christian family. We are not a young earth family. There was nothing anti-Christian that we found. Now, cost for it, depending on your level, is between $40 and $60. They do run a Black Friday sale. So, and I think they run a back to school sale as well. So if price is a concern, watch for those. So let's start with some of the pros, in my view. One, the books were a pretty good selection, both in the history, science, and in the literature. They were books, especially in literature, that I would not have chosen. Not because I would have turned my nose up at them. Most of them I wouldn't have come across. And so that was really good. Ben has enjoyed almost all of the books. There were a few that he didn't. And for those, the rule in our home is that you have to give it 3 chapters or 50 pages, whichever comes first, and then move on, because there are too many great books out there in the world to spend time reading bad ones or reading ones you don't enjoy. There were a few he skipped, and then there were a few that I skipped because I had hopped into the middle school, high school C group, secular academic or secular eclectic, whatever that homeschool group is. I hopped into there, and there were a few books that people had said that they had chosen to skip for reasons like there was one that talked about rape, or there was a rape incident in it, and just things that, yes, we need to talk about them, but didn't feel like a great fit for this scenario. My understanding is that with the update, those have been removed. And I'm going to talk about the update in a bit. Books overall were a really good choice. Interesting, unique, great choices. The pacing overall was pretty good. There were some days and weeks where it was either too short or too long to fit in that time for Ben, but mostly pacing was really good, which I really appreciated, because sometimes you'll hear people say that with these kinds of programs that the pacing can be really off. So I liked that. Most of the links and books were available. A few exceptions, but again, the update, I'll talk about that. I've also had those programs, and I'm sure you have too, where you have plans for not even an all-in-one type of program like this, but just anything, and then you go to find a link and it's out of date, behind a paywall now, whatever. So I like that. I appreciated that. As for a con, the fact that I can use it in past tense because he finished in January, it was a con for us. I don't know if that was because he is a fast reader, which he is, or what. The way we paced things was that if he finished a chunk before the week was over, he just moved on. Otherwise, he would still be doing it, but I would have had to supplement a lot as earlier in the year to make up for it. So, depending on your kiddo, that may be a problem. Now, I have not heard many people complain about this, so I suspect that it's more about Ben. Especially at the elementary level, I think it would not be a problem at all. But for high school level, where I'm counting hours of work, roughly counting hours of work to go to credits, that became a problem. At the end of the year, or at the end of his Build Your Library year, then I've had to add on. We've had to supplement for history and science. Now, as for being light, the other thing that I would say is that the science, and I don't know if the 9th grade was supposed to count as a lab science. It was not. It was activities, not experiments. The activities came from the Janus von Cleve books, which are fantastic, but they're like 5 or 10 minute demonstrations, if that type of work. Twice as much prep work and cleanup as you spend on the activity, which, as you may know, is kind of a complaint of mine about a lot of science programs. So, at least the 9th grade one, I would not count it as a lab science. 10th grade, I think, is biology, and 11th grade is chemistry, and I guess 12th grade is probably physics. Those maybe, I have not looked at them close enough to know what curriculum they use and what lab activities they use. But for 9th grade, it's definitely not. That's okay, generally, because most colleges want 2, maybe 3 lab sciences, so you still have that time. But do know that if you're using 9th specifically and hoping for a lab credit, I would not be comfortable counting it for a lab credit at all. Now, my next con is about the updates. I bought this in Black Friday 2021. So not even halfway through Ben's 8th grade year. When I purchased it, on the Build Your Library website, they have a list of when the updates are coming, which I love that she routinely updates these. But it said that it was going to be ready in spring of 2022. I don't remember what part, but spring. Then it became summer, late fall. It just now, today's March 1st, I got the email today that it was updated. So a full year after it was supposed to be updated, it was finally updated. So when I bought it, I bought it in part because it was going to be updated. I would know that the books were going to be available there. I wouldn't have to check links, anything. So, and I understand, let me be clear, that I understand that things happen, things take longer, all of that. I get it. But if you say it's going to be done, then I expect it to be done in less time than a year later. That wouldn't be a deterrent for buying it, in my opinion. But do know that even if it says it's going to be updated and you're counting on that update, you shouldn't. Because it may or may not happen. And again, I understand things take forever. I am the queen of understanding that. However, I just think it's important to know that you shouldn't count on the update. And the fact that it was stated and then it kept getting changed kind of bothers me. Like, if you don't know that it's going to be ready by then, don't put that out there. But I would say that's probably like a carryover of being burned by other things. Just know updates may not happen when they say they're going to happen. It is an easy to implement program, print and go. At the beginning of the year, I did go through the literature list and choose which ones we would skip, which ones we wouldn't, and if I had to buy them or if I could get them from the library, and I marked all those down. You have to print. Maybe I didn't end up printing almost anything. There were a few things that were like activity sheets, and I just sent those, like pulled them out of the PDF and sent them to Ben, and he completed them through a PDF reader on his computer, Foxit. I think he used maybe Adobe, I don't remember. So I had to do a little bit of finagling with that. A couple things about the layout of it. So you get an overview, which I really liked the overview, and then or weekly overview, and then Day has their own detailed list. I copied that into a different program for Ben because keeping track of all of that and making sure it gets read well, the way it was laid out, I didn't think was going to be a great fit for Ben. If we end up using this program again in high school, I probably will print it out for him then, because I think he'll be able to better manage it by then. 12th grade. But I don't love the layout. For the detailed page of instructions, if I were reading over it, it would be really easy to skip. If I were just trying to get through my work each day, like skip parts of it, because it's all kind of squished together, and there are no check boxes to like clearly indicate that this is your own separate assignment. It's not a critique of, or like a con exactly. Just depending on your student, you may have to help train them on how to look through that. The other thing, and I don't know if this was specifically for Build Your Library 9 or if it happens in other ones, but for example, for science, one of the spines that he used was a short history of nearly everything. He absolutely loved Bill Bryson and his writing in the book. And each chapter had questions. Okay, so your student's supposed to print it out, spaced it for them to handwrite it. But the next page is the answers. So it's question, answers, question, answers. Well, if you are printing it out to give to your student, that means you have to split them all apart, and you can't do back-to-back easily. It's a little thing, but it was a frustrating thing to me. I sent him all the pages, but again, then I had to pull out every other page so that he wasn't getting the answers along with it. Does that make sense? And again, I don't know how it is with other ones, other levels, but those little things are just one more thing. Was it still easier than playing it all myself? Absolutely. But it was a frustrating thing nonetheless. So, like I said, I won't be using it for 10th grade for Ben or 11th grade because those are world history years in there. And world history is paired with biology. World history 1 is paired with biology, and world history 2 is paired with chemistry. But he's doing chemistry next year as a 10th grader. It just felt too complicated to do it all that way. So I'm not against, I'm not using it because of the program. I'm just not using it because of the way his next couple of high school years work out. I am, though, considering it for Matthew for 8th grade. 8th grade's focus is on history of the world through the eyes of science, and they use the history of science by Joy Hakeem, which you may know we absolutely love. I talk about it often. We've loved those books. So maybe, I don't know, I'm going to give it some thought. There are literature lists for both Matthew's 8th grade and Ben's 10th grade. I will use some of those recommendations, though, because I think they're really good. And I like that they include books that I wouldn't otherwise choose. I really like that. So those are some of my thoughts. I like the program as designed. The layout could use some work for me, but plenty of people love the program, so I'm going to assume that the layouts work well for most people. Again, don't count the updates on time, but even without the updates, it's a good program. And definitely one that I think should be considered if you are looking for something that's pre-planned, if you are looking for something that incorporates lots of various subjects, somewhat ties them together depending on the level. I will say that's one thing that this year was prehistory for Ben. And for history, and then the science was a geology, or geology focus. So a lot of that kind of became redundant. And there were times when he was reading something in history that was basically what he was reading in science. So we had to adapt for that. But again, it was kind of a minor thing. It was definitely a great choice for this year. I enjoyed it. I'm glad that I tried something completely new. And I am glad that I found something that, of all the all-in-one programs I've looked at in the past, this was definitely the one that I had to adapt the least to. So that's it. If you have any questions about Digital Library, be sure to leave them down there. Happy to answer. And I'll talk to you in the next video.